I think that talking about pornography is one of the greatest ways for you to stop watching it, right? Because it manifests itself in the dark whenever you're alone, and it guards itself with shame and condemnation. Whenever you strip it of all of those things, it's gross. You don't want it. You're not attracted to it like you were before whenever you were self-isolating. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Triumphant podcast. We are so glad that you're here tuning in. Thank you guys so much for coming by. Today is going to be a little bit different than some of the other episodes. There's a few things that I really wanted to discuss today and just be really, pretty honest. Like I said in the last episode, we were going to be talking about practical ways to help abstain from lust and pornography and masturbation, right? And so that's the whole gist of what we're going to be talking about today. However, I do also want to talk about a little bit of stuff that happened in my week and just be completely vulnerable, because I think that this vulnerability actually helps. Hopefully it helps people understand, hey, this actually is a way for us to relate and talk candidly about a topic that not a whole lot of people talk about. So anyways, first and foremost, this week, man, it was tough. It was really tough. I had talked to you on the last episode about a good friend of mine who's been helping mentor me through this whole purity process that I've been walking through. And he said, usually around the 30-day mark of abstaining from porn and masturbation is whenever there's like another wave of temptation. And he's like, I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this to help just keep you on your guard, keep you on your toes. That way, whenever it does come, you're ready for it. So to be completely honest, that day came, and it came with ruthless intent, man. It came on Thursday, and it was from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep. Now, the thing that was really hard about this was, in the past, what I would normally do is I would say, hey, I don't want to feel this. I'm going to go run to porn so that I don't have to feel this, so that I can get rid of this negative emotion that I'm feeling. I can go ahead and bail on this. I can go watch some porn and I can come back and I'll be fine. I'll be fine. This is the way that I'm going to take care of my mental health. Well, as anybody who has done that repeatedly over time, it does not help your mental health whatsoever. If anything, it makes it about 1 billion times worse. You're just covered in shame. You're covered in guilt. And so I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that this time. But what dawned on me through this entire process was, man, I've been living in a life where all of my relationships are transaction based. All of my relationships. I go into these relationships thinking, okay, I'm going to do this for you. You're going to do this for me. Much like a business deal, right? And I woke up and I actually have a side hustle business that we're doing right now. And we're in the middle of a pretty serious debacle to where we're not making any type of profit. As a matter of fact, we're losing money. And it's all because there was this breakdown in communication. And I started feeling that. And I was like, oh my gosh. I have approached all of these relationships in my life as a transaction-based relationship, especially with my wife. Now, I'm going to be very forthcoming with this, and I'm going to also honor my wife and her integrity throughout this entire podcast. But I'm going to be very honest. Coming off of this porn addiction, I expected, okay, well, I'm just going to turn all of my lust, all of my needs, all of my sexual desires onto my wife. That's the healthy way to do this, right? No, not at all. You don't just get to take this compulsive addiction that you have and then force feed it to your wife and say, now you're responsible for making me better. You're responsible for all the times that I would go masturbate. You're the one who needs to make this better for me. That's not true. Men, you have got to take responsibility. You have to take responsibility, okay? You've got to start walking the walk, okay? So there was one thing that I saw on TikTok, and TikTok it's been really hit or miss for me with some of this theological stuff. But there was one thing theologically that stood out to me. There was a guy that said, the work of Jesus dying on the cross and saving you by grace through faith was his job. However, the renewing of your mind is your job. That's the process. That's where all the work goes in, right? Being sanctified to be more like Christ, that has to be done on your own time by your own effort. And so what I've noticed is I was like, crap, I thought if I just stopped watching porn, all of these things would be easier. I had this really misconstrued perspective of how life was going to be afterwards. And so what I started to realize was I've got to take control over my own thoughts. I've got to take control over my own emotions, and I have to take control over my own actions. See, the thing with addiction is you can just compulsively give into something that helps medicate these three things. That's what porn addiction was. It medicated these three things. I could feel a good physical release. I didn't have to worry about my emotions. And the mental aspect of getting that dopamine and serotonin hit made it all that much better. So what I noticed whenever I came to this realization was like, oh, my wife is not going to be a transactional being for me like porn was for me. The transaction with porn goes like this. It requires very little from you, but it takes so much more than what you give it, right? It doesn't require a lot of emotional effort to go click on a porn site. It doesn't require pursuit. It doesn't require any type of patience, tenderness, loving kindness like a wife does, or like a girlfriend or a fiance. Porn requires very little, but it ends up taking more and more from you every single time. It's a negative ROI every single time. And what I started to realize was I cannot take that same approach for my wife. I've got to be more intentional. And so whenever I came to this conclusion, I was really upset with myself for being so ignorant as to think that, oh, I can just turn this into a way for my wife and I to have sex more. No, absolutely not. Or isn't she going to be so proud of me for abstaining from porn? Isn't this going to make her want to have sex with me more? No, absolutely not. It's the pursuit. It's the intentionality. It is the loving kindness. It's the patience. It's me listening. It's me pursuing her heart that makes her more inclined to express our love and connection physically. It's not like I did the dishes. I did all the things. I went down the chores list and man, she's definitely going to have sex with me now. No, that's not how this goes, right? So basically all of that to say, Thursday, all of these emotions and thoughts came to a head and I had to process through them. So, in doing so, I had to figure out some very practical ways to abstain from watching porn, getting off track, masturbating, the whole thing. Number one, taking the emotional responsibility of saying, stopping before I get overwhelmed and trying to think through, okay, why am I feeling this way? That was my number one thing. Addressing why I'm feeling a specific way. Do the mental legwork, start running through the equation. Okay, what caused this kind of reaction? And once I get there, the second thing comes through. Now, I understand that some of you may not be married or in a committed relationship where this kind of topic is welcomed to talk about. But once I had gone through and figured out why I'm feeling a specific way, the second part is to talk about it with my spouse. Verbally process through it. Once I had verbally processed through it, it was like a night and day difference. I felt lighter. I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel like this was something that I had to go and figure out on my own. Because that was the overwhelming thing that would always make me run to porn. It's like, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm just going to go, dip out for a little bit, right? Which is totally unhealthy. We all know that. So these first two things right here, they're what helped me mentally and emotionally, right? So that, because for me, it was always a mental escape. I'll go watch porn because I don't want to think about or feel the things that I'm feeling right now. And it was always me trying to run away from that responsibility. Before I get into these last two things, we've got to understand something about lust. Lust as a principality itself isn't very complicated. Okay. And the best kind of breakdown explanation that I've heard about lust is that it's like a seed. Okay. Think of your mind as a clay pot. Okay. And there's really good topsoil in there. It's nice and fertile. Anything that goes into that pot of soil is going to grow, and it can grow quickly. So, what you need to understand is lust is like a seed. Whenever that seed gets planted, if you leave that there and don't dig it up, it's going to grow roots very quickly. From there, it becomes more difficult to pull out. Lust leads to fantasies, and fantasies lead to action. So, there's 3 steps to this thing. If we don't get this seed after it's been planted, whether it be something that you saw on Instagram, you accidentally scrolled past an ad or something like that, or you saw somebody in some scantily outfit, right? If you don't address, oh crap, there's this little seed that got put right there. If you don't take that out quickly and discard it, that seed will lead to a fantasy. That's the root system. The action is it actually budding out of the ground and producing fruit. Okay. So think of the actions as fruit. It bears fruit that you can see. The 2 things that have really helped me prevent this lustful process is, number 1, whenever you see something that could turn into something else, get rid of it. Stop it. Confess it to somebody as soon as you can. Hey man, like your accountability partner or your spouse or anybody that you trust, be like, hey man, Instagram's been really hard for me. There's a few people that I follow, and once you confess that and get it out in the light, you're exposing that seed, and you're basically discarding its power from there. So confessing with your mouth and making sure that you have someone who's got your back is huge. Most of the time, whenever you got an accountability partner, it's like 2 guys meeting together being like, yeah, porn sucks, right? It's terrible. And then you both kind of walk away feeling defeated. I don't really like that particular model of accountability. I would much rather go to someone and say, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. This has been very difficult. And just have some time where the 2 of you can talk about, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm going to confess this to somebody. And I would love it if you checked in on me. I would love it if I could check in on you and we could have regular conversation like this, right? Because what you're doing is you're taking that seed that gets planted in darkness and you're taking it out and talking about it with somebody and exposing it to the light. Whenever it's exposed to the light like that without any soil, it can't grow. It will not manifest the fruit that it would if you left it in the soil and let it remain there, okay? So having this type of confession thing, or someone that you can talk to, is the third and probably one of the most important steps in this entire deal. Number 1, thinking through your emotions. Number 2, sharing your emotions with people, not exposing them, but processing through them. Number 3, taking your thoughts captive. Don't let those seeds stay planted. And then number 4, go through the preventative measures that you need to in order to make sure that you're not putting your metaphorical pot of soil in places where seeds are constantly being dumped into it, right? So you don't want to be going into a giant grain bin if you're trying to keep seeds out of your clay pot. Seeds are just going to be falling in there. What does that look like? Take a fast from Instagram. Get off of social media. If you know that there's a particular time and place where you are tempted heavily, don't go to that place at that time. Create a new habit, create a new routine. And if it's something that you catch yourself repeatedly doing, what that shows is that there is a chronic mental issue that you are running into that needs to be addressed. Most of the time, what I've found is that whenever there's a chronic mental issue like that, you've got to go and process with somebody else. So it just leads you directly into step number 3. And all of these steps are pretty well intertwined with one another. Again, these are just 4 practical ways that I've found to be really, really helpful. But the thing about this whole, like, 2 out of the 4 things that you got to do is talk about it with somebody. I think that talking about pornography is one of the greatest ways for you to stop watching it, right? Because it manifests itself in the dark whenever you're alone, and it guards itself with shame and condemnation. Whenever you strip it of all of those things, it's gross. You don't want it. You're not attracted to it like you were before whenever you were self-isolating. So get someone around you that you can talk to. Get someone around you who is open and honest and caring and who's not going to condemn you. Whenever I was really, really into this whole addiction, I thought it was just me who was going through this. I was like, all these other guys, their lives seem pretty good. They seem to be pretty happy with their wives via social media, which is a total faking show anyways. They had it all together, all the things, right? But then what I started to realize just through people sending me messages was like, oh, there are a lot more guys out here who want freedom from this, who actually don't want this in their life. And it's this amazing phenomenon now to where we're seeing people actually talk about it because it's become so prevalent in society. It's the giant elephant in the room. And it's getting so big now that people are like, all right, we got to address this thing. This is just massive. We're seeing the whole thing with Balenciaga. We're seeing sex trafficking issues all over the place. We had the whole thing with the Jeffrey Epstein deal. Everything is centered around this nasty sexual immorality. And finally, people are getting to talk about it and say, this is not okay. This is not okay. This isn't something that produces sexual health. It isn't something that produces mental or emotional health or relational health. Why is it here? Why is it here? And why are corporations pushing it? I'm going to talk about this. I didn't plan on talking about this at first, but I'm going to. There's an issue that we have in our culture right now. It's so prevalent in social media now. It's all over the place. OnlyFans, right? What it has shown to me is that this generation's dignity now has a dollar sign attached to it. The dignity has become worth a specific dollar amount per month. $8, $6, $5 per month. And I will sacrifice all of my dignity, all of my humility, and I will just throw it at your feet so that you can pay me. It's shown me that women don't know their worth and men don't want to emotionally, mentally, or intentionally invest into women anymore. We would much rather just pay $8 a month so that we could get our rocks off to watching you do these obscene things on the internet. So whenever people are saying like chivalry is dead, well, in some ways, yeah. Whenever you are having billions of dollars funneled through this gross amateur porn site where people can subscribe to your content, yeah, there's nothing chivalrous about that. And what it does, it dehumanizes and reduces women to just their bodies. They're no longer a multidimensional being who has feelings, goals, thoughts, emotions, has hobbies or anything like this, right? It dehumanizes them and reduces them to just their bodies. For men, they're able to go in there and reap sexually where they have not sown, right? They've sown an $8 subscription each month, but they have not sown emotional intentionality. They have not sown support, love, kindness, tenderness into this woman at all. And so what it does is it shortcuts the entire process that was initially created for men to have the physical connection and pleasure with their wife. There used to be a cost, right? So going back to the whole transactionalism, there used to be a very specific cost for men in order to have intimacy with their wives. You got to pursue them. You got to buy them flowers. You got to listen. You got to be attentive to detail. You got to serve them. And you have to do it without expecting anything in return. You have to do it from deep within your heart. You have to want to serve them. But now what we've done is we've created this shortcut to a counterfeit release sexually that cost you $8 a month. So this whole transactionalism thing hit me hard this week. I realized, man, I've succumbed to this way of thinking. I don't want to think this way. I want to actually love my wife for who she is, not just for helping me have great sex in bed. I want to love her for who she is. I want to actually desire to serve her. I want to desire to provide for her. I want to desire to listen to her. Frankly, whenever I was watching porn all the time, it was annoying to sit there and listen. It was annoying to do the chores. It was annoying to be attentive and try and do date nights. Because I had created this mental shortcut. That allowed me to get the end game result that I want by bypassing all of the things that it cost me to do that with my wife. Come on now. Like, if that ain't a realization, I don't know what is. Dude, for married men out there, this is crucial. You are reaping where you have not sown, and you are reaping a counterfeit pleasure. A counterfeit pleasure that is seeking to destroy your mind. It causes erectile dysfunction. It causes mental health issues, depression, suicidality. None of this is worth pursuing. Your wife is worth pursuing. Hell, she's the one you made the covenant with. She's the one that you vowed to, right? I got on my high horse here and started preaching. But I want everyone to know that I'm preaching to myself just as much as I am preaching on this microphone. This is something that I feel very, very strongly about. So anyways, before we wrap up today, there are a couple of Q&A questions that I wanted to go over. We put a poll on my Instagram, and I wanted to touch on these questions because they were great questions. And yeah, so here is question number 1. Is there something you wish you would have learned as a kid to keep porn out? Yes, I wish I would have learned that porn is not my friend. Porn will not assist me. Porn will not help me accomplish any of my life goals. It will not help me be more confident in bed. It will not help me love my wife better. And those are the things that I really wanted. I wanted to be a dad and a husband long before I knew what sex was like. So, porn is not your friend. Question number 3. What is your vision or goal for the podcast? What we want to see is we want to see men and women live lives triumphantly. So not be addicted, have greater mental health, have greater emotional health, and have greater physical health. So I think that's the goal. We want to be talking about a bunch of things geared for single men and women, married men and women, and just talk about, hey, here's what we believe to be is true. We're going to talk about it. We're going to quote scripture. We're going to cite research. Third question. This is a huge question. Would y'all ever do an episode researching how to protect kids from stuff on the internet or media? We would absolutely do an episode about protecting children from the harmful things on the internet and media. I think that requires a lot of really intentional research, so I don't want to speak on that right now. But that definitely would be a great episode for us to talk about. So those are the 3 main questions that we got from our poll. We'll be sure to do another one of those. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, on YouTube. We would love to continue to create content like this and help people out there understand the real cost of sexual health, sexual purity, and how worth it is to live in freedom like this. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Love you guys. We will see you on the next one. Peace and God bless.